My name is Srilata Sircar. I am a lecturer in India and Global Affairs at the King's India Institute, and I'm also the program convener for the MSc Global Affairs program. So I went to school in Calcutta, which is in eastern India, and I think in my family there was always this sort of expectation that I would go for higher education, because I think I came from a family where, like, both of my grandmothers, one of them was not allowed to go to school and the other one was like the first woman in her family to go to school. When I was in high school, I remember reading this book called In an Antique Land. It's a book by Amitav Ghosh, who is now a very well-known writer. And this book was a sort of non-fiction and fiction combined version of his PhD dissertation in history. And I remember reading the book and feeling really fascinated by it, and then turning over and looking at the author bio, and it said the author read history at St. Stephen's College in Delhi. And I think I was about 15 years old then, and I was like, yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. It was quite a fight to, insist that I wanted to study for a bachelor's in history. And St. Stephen's College at that time happened to be like one of the top ranking colleges. And so it was almost like a bargaining thing with my parents that, okay, if you get into the best college and if you get like that one hostel seat for women, then you can go. And somehow I managed to do that. And I really enjoyed studying history. But I think at the end of 3 years, I felt that I wanted to do something that is more sort of immediately relevant to our lives. And somehow, given the nature of history education at that time, in that context, it didn't feel like I could have an immediate impact. But with that thought in mind, I decided to apply for a master's in development studies. And so I went to the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. One of the reasons that attracted me to the program was the prospect of writing a dissertation and doing primary research and learning how to do that. So as part of that process, I did some field work. I wrote about women who are involved in electoral politics at the grassroots level in the smallest of villages in rural India, and how their participation in politics, if their participation in politics has an impact on their interpersonal gender relations at home, with their families, with their spouses and such. And I remember the first ever interview that I did, where we went through like a series of, just the factual questions of like, how did you run your campaign, and what do the meetings look like, and what do you talk about in the meetings and such. And then after I had sort of, built a rapport, I asked, so do you think your in-laws treat you any different since you came into this elected position? And I remember how she like sat up a bit straight, and like her face changed, and she like tightened like the corner of her sari, and she kind of leant in, came closer to me, and in this like tone of, this is between you and me, but I'm gonna tell you this, she was like, yes, it has. And I remember the feeling of that moment, and I kind of, had this kind of penny drop moment of like, oh, I asked something meaningful, like this is something that is important to her and that she wants to share with me, that she wants to talk more about. And I think that is the feeling that I've been chasing for the rest of my career, pretty much, trying to find the people to whom I can ask meaningful questions and come back with this feeling of, having made meaning together. I received my doctoral degree at Lund University in Sweden, and I really enjoyed studying for my PhD there. But afterwards, I wanted to, come to the UK and have a sort of change of setting. And I also felt that the things that I'm interested in, like South Asia studies and post-colonial perspectives, feminist geography, London is sort of the hub for all of that. So I really wanted to be in the thick of things. So I started applying for postdocs and other kinds of jobs in academia. And I happened to land one. And that was a postdoc that was at the geography department here at King's. So I was a postdoctoral research associate on a project funded by the ESRC that was hosted here at the geography department for the first year. So after the first year, the project and the PI moved to the UCL Department of Geography. So I moved along with them and spent a year there. And around the time when that postdoc was coming to an end, there was this position announced at the India Institute here at King's, which I applied for. And since 2020, that's where I have been. I started out in my PhD as a post-colonial urban geographer, let's say. So I studied how settlements transition from being agrarian or rural settlements to becoming urban or being seen as a city and being classified officially as a city, but also having a sort of urban consciousness in the sense that the people and the community see themselves as urban. And I did this in the context of Bengal in India, a couple of districts close to my hometown, Calcutta. And the reason that I did that is because I started my PhD in 2012, and in 2011, India had a census, and in that census of 2011, it had emerged that there are more than 3,000 new cities that have emerged in India in the last 10 years, which is a kind of a mind-bending number and like a puzzle to solve, like where did all these cities come from? There is this common thread running through all of the different research projects that I have taken on over the years. And I think that common thread is this question of how do the social relations of caste and gender shape the world that we live in. And I think of myself as a critical geographer, which means that I don't think of knowledge production or geographical research as an end in itself, but that there is a larger stake here, which is, the stake of social justice. I no longer wanted to be just focused on studying India, but wanted to shift my focus or sort of broaden my focus out into understanding the place of India in the world and how India shapes the world, and how there is this sort of, dialectical, relationship between India shaping the world and the world shaping India. And again, to put caste and gender at the center of it, the challenge, I think, is getting all the pieces together. So in most, historical research or in social science research, there is never, like one definitive source where you just go and place a question and get the answer. You usually have, archives that are very sort of scattered and disintegrated, and before you go into the archive, you have no idea what you're going to find in there. Which sometimes can be, very exciting, because you go in there and you find something completely unexpected and it sets you off on a different trail. But sometimes you don't find anything, or you find something and you don't know how to make meaning out of it. I think we are standing at a very sort of crucial moment for, the public life of caste in the world. So there is definitely a sort of renewed and reinvigorated interest in learning about caste, not only in India, but like globally. So for example, in USA, the city of Seattle recently brought into legislation to recognize caste discrimination and to outlaw it. And there are a number of universities in the US, like Brandeis University and the California State University system, that have included caste discrimination into their, the purview of their equalities legislation, and to recognize caste discrimination and outlaw it. And so what I'm hoping to do with my research going forward is to consolidate all of this into a research agenda. So right now I'm working on an edited volume that will bring together chapters from scholars from different disciplines who are interested in the caste question and in, have an explicitly anti-caste stance, who are writing about how to bring in the caste question into the study of various disciplines. And my research agenda is to sort of bring them all together to form this kind of consolidated sort of academic army against caste, and to really further this agenda of anti-caste resistance and caste justice on a global platform.